This thing on? Oh, hi, how's it going? Welcome to my second ever YouTube video. Before I start, I just want to say, nice English cup of tea for anybody across the pond there. Not quite sure how many people in America drink tea, if it's as popular over there as it is here. I'm guessing coffee is the main thing, seeing as it's such a go kind of country. But actually that's not true. There's many places where they take it nice and easy. Anyway, cheers. I needed that. Anyway, I just want to talk about, well, first of all, before I start, I just want to say the last video I did, I uploaded, I think I did it yesterday, I uploaded earlier this morning. It was really long, it was bloody long. It was about 42 minutes. I didn't even realise where the time went, so I'm going to try and make this one as concise as possible. I'm going to try and time myself. I'm going to put my phone on now. I'm going to give it about 10 minutes, or I'll watch the little Atomus, make sure I don't go much over. But roughly 10 minutes I'll talk for. I just want to talk a little bit more about the Sony A7R3, A7 III. But I'd also like to point out that I'm filming this on the Fuji XT3, which is my new favourite camera. It's not going to have that same kind of bokeh as the Sony did on the previous video, but you know, I'm trying different focal lengths. I'm also giving you a different view of my apartment. I was going to put I wasn't sure whether to put the blinds up or down, but I figured just keep them down. I mean, you're just going to see the outside world. All I wanted to really talk about was, apart from apologise for waffling on the last one so much, was just the various lens choices I ended up settling on. Mainly because all my equipment got stolen, and the second time around I had to be much more considerate. It was a kind of good experiment, because I don't have an infinite amount of cash as much as I would like to. In fact, most of the time as a musician it's hand to mouth, and I have to work really hard. I think in real terms, boo-hoo by the way, in real terms my income hasn't gone up because of inflationary kind of changes since about 2000 maybe, you know, and a lot of musicians out there will kind of back me up on this. I'm not complaining, there's no affiliate links, so I'm not worried about making a crust. I would like to also talk about creativity, because we're all talking about cameras and various things, but there are guys out there giving really good tutorials. I'm going to throw some links up to some of the YouTubers that I really enjoy watching. Some guys are technical, and some of the guys sort of have a light-hearted approach. Some are a bit of both. There's one guy who I really think is going to be huge on YouTube if he's not already. It's the camera conspiracy guy. He's just so funny, and I could watch that guy for just hours and hours, and he doesn't really say a whole heap. His delivery is hilarious, and I just love it. It's just really cool. And it was really refreshing, you know, to see a YouTuber injecting that element of comedy. You won't be getting that from me, by the way. So switch off now if that's what you're after, I would say. I mean, this guy is funny, but he also does some valid experiments, and mainly sort of, you know, experimenting with sort of small body cameras, just trying to see what it's like as a vlogger, you know, to see whether it's useful for him. I think he uses a GH5. Is that right, Mr. Camera Conspiracy Man? But I have a feeling that, you know, eventually Sony will come out with that killer vlogging camera. I think they're after that. There's rumours afloat now of this announcement from Sony that's imminent. A7000? I'm not so sure. I think people are going to be a bit disappointed. I have a feeling it's going to be something else. I saw on camera rumours today it might be like an A5000 or A5400, whatever it might be. But you never know, it might be something big, we don't know, and we'll wait and see. I think tomorrow around 4 to 6 PM UK time, I don't know what that is in the US, sorry, or anywhere else in the world for that matter. So what happened was I had all my equipment stolen. I then went and bought a Nikon, sold the Nikon, got rid of it. I mean, I've got a local camera store, they're called, am I allowed to promote on YouTube? I'm not sure, anyway. They're called Chiswick Camera Centre in West London. They're really good, they've been around a long time, but the guy's really kind to me. Every time I go in with the camera and say, look, I'm not getting on with it, he gives me a sort of like a 10% hit. He doesn't do that for everyone. Don't start going down to his shop trying to get 10%. on your returns, but it just gives me a chance to play with the cameras. And that D850 was great. I went back to him and explained that because I'm not a DSLR shooter, I'm not a sports photographer. That D850, I guess its main objective is, I would say, landscape, fashion, portrait, those kind of things. It's not a run and gun sports camera, although you could probably do run and gun with it. It's just that it's a great autofocus system. It's just that megapixel count. Similarly, the A7R3 is obviously, it's not really an events camera, but I do use it for events, and then I just sort of either crop in and use that Super 35 mode, the extra focal lengths. I mainly have been keeping the Tamron 28 to 75, similarly to some other people out there that have sort of got to like this lens. It's just so good for the money. I mean, I don't want to throw money at G Masters. I'd like to, but just the weight factor really. And I used this on a gimbal, and it worked really well. I had a few issues with the Super 35 or 28, so whatever the crop factor is, shooting around, what would that be, 40 something, 45. So it was a bit tight for me, and when people were coming towards me and I was backing up with the gimbal, it was some work to stay out their way, But it was great. It was good. It was a wide enough angle of view to give me what I needed. And then if I want a wider view, I use the 16 to 35, which is the f4. This is my favourite gimbal lens that Sony do. More than the G Master, unless you've got a big enough gimbal to handle it, but just because of its weight. It's an f4, yes, it's not going to be as good in low light, but it's really good. I've used this a lot on the gimbal, and I think it's the best gimbal lens for the Sonys, personally, in my opinion. But it's a great street photography lens. It's an f4, but it's great. If you've got good light, it's good for landscape. It's good for interior. 16mm, full frame. You're getting a nice wide angle of view there. That's great. Price point, I paid about $1,200 for this at the time, but I think it's gone down in price. The other lens I mentioned in the other video is the 85 f1.8, and there it is for you on the iPhone. The 85 f1.8. It's a great lens. Nice blurry backgrounds. Yes, it's not a G Master, but for the money you pay for this, it's even got the little function button, auto manual focus. I mean, for me, this is the best lens that Sony make, because for about £600, this represents really good value for money and quality. You're getting a great lens, really good for portraits. I'm going to do some portraits for a friend. He needs some fashion shots. He's a kind of ex-model that's needing a little bit of cash, so he wants to get back into it. He does sort of fashion modelling, and I need to give him some more headshots and stuff. So I'll mainly be using that, and possibly the Tamron. I'm going to try the Tamron out. It's sort of longest at 75, just to see what it gives me at 2.8. I'm sure it will look good. Let's see how we get on with those. So what I've ended up settling down with is the Tamron 28 to 75. I keep forgetting what it is, sorry. The 85 f1.8 Sony lens, the Zeiss 16 to 35 f4, and then finally the cheap and cheerful 50mm f1.8. To me, this is a really good lens because it's less than £200 now. What's that, $200? I mean, it's so cheap. This is great for sort of all-round stuff, anything from street photography, because on the body it's nice and tight, nice and small. I'll show you on the iPhone. It's a bit close up. So it's a nice small lens compared to that Tamron, and it's just really cheap. It gives you really good sharp images. It's not bad. People kind of can take it or leave it. Obviously it's light, it feels a bit plasticky, but it's a very good lens. I picked it up on the way to a photo shoot that I was doing, and I felt a little bit shy of wide lenses, and the reason why is because I was shooting in very low light in indoor. It was sort of a concert type thing, and I was a little bit nervous because I was using the Sony 24 to 105. Excuse me while I have a sip of my tea. 24 to 105, and it was an f4, and I was bit worried the f4 might not cut the mustard, even though it's a great lens. And you know, with the Sonys now, you can take the ISO up quite high before you get too much noise. I still felt I needed more sort of 1.8s, so I mainly use the 85 and the 50mm for an event that I shot. I did use the 24-105 because I had the two bodies. I used the A7 III and I used the A7R3, and I used the 24-105 on the A7 III because I feel that the A7 III is a little bit better in lower light. So I used the wider lenses on this, and it worked really well. I didn't have the Tamron at the time. I probably would have used it for sure, but it did really good. The brief was an outdoor summery feel, but it was shot indoors in really dark and dingy conditions, so it was a bit of a challenge. I didn't achieve it. I told them realistically that wasn't going to happen. Obviously it doesn't make any sense to lie to your customer and tell them that you can achieve outdoor sunny exposures indoors. What I did to sort of on that shoot to give them as close to what I could was drag the shutter as much as I could, and I explained to them that I'll drag the shutter and shoot as best I can to get that sort of ambient light in there, and it kind of worked. You know, it was definitely light and bright, but it was pitch black at one point and I had no chance. So anyway, enough about that. So the Sony A7R3 is what I'm using. I still think there's loads of cameras out there that are brilliant, you know. I really feel that the XT3 is a great choice now for people getting into it that want really high-end video. It's great. It's as good as the Panasonic, almost, you know, to my mind. I just think that 10-bit, you know, F-log is great. It looks good. I haven't really had a chance to grade it much. I had a little play around with it the other day. I'm just kind of getting used to it. So as I improve my sort of abilities on that camera, I'll kind of show you more of the features if you're interested. But I really want to talk about creativity, because one of the reasons why I got into photography wasn't because I wanted to buy loads of cameras. It's because I'm a musician by trade, and one of the things I always complain about is that when you're a live musician especially, all these moments are just passing moments, and what happens is you come away from a gig feeling good, but there's nothing tangible at the end of it. You've got nothing to show for it, unless you're going to film a video or create an album, you know. So there's a couple of things that I've decided to do and sort of promised myself. One is to make more stuff, put more stuff out there that's tangible, that I can say, look, I've done that. Photography and videography represent that for me, because there's an end product, and when I play live music, it's just for the moment, it's a passing moment. So I guess I want a bit more of a legacy in that respect, and that's one of the reasons why I like photography. I'm not a very good carpenter. I'll probably get into carpentry, a bit of wood whittling as well, but you know, something tangible. So I want to do a little bit more of that creativity. The other thing I want to talk about in photography is, you know, there's a few things I really enjoy in life. One of them is tennis, you know, apart from the obvious, obviously. I enjoy obviously socialising. I can't spell socialising with friends and various, but I'm a bit of a loner these days. I sort of split up with my missus, my other half, a few years ago, and I hit a real low point, and that's when I started getting more heavily into photography, and it was a real creative outlet for me. There's a few things I enjoy that are kind of like meditation, and one of the things I'd encourage people to do is take more photos, especially things like landscape and street photography, because it gets you out of the house. Grab your cameras, go outdoors and shoot some stuff, go for a nice long walk and meditate, and just take in your surroundings, your world, you know. It's a nice thing to do, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much. It's therapeutic, and it's a nice art form. If I was good at painting, I'd probably do that. And what I've realised is I just want to be as creative as possible and just make more stuff. My big passion is songwriting. I really enjoy writing songs, and I've been doing a lot more of that lately. And so I want to kind of fill my days with photography, videography, making some YouTube videos, songwriting, and playing live music. And if I can make a crust and earn a living doing that, I'm going to be so happy. It's a lovely thing to be able to be creative, and I would encourage anybody, even if you've got a 9-to-5 job and you're just an amateur photographer, do it as a hobby. It's such a nice thing to do. I find it really sad now that a lot of camera shops are, I wouldn't say they're struggling, but there's not so many around anymore. The advent of iPhones and various camera phones, people don't tend to use cameras as much. At one point, I think even Tony and Chelsea may have done a video about cameras dying basically because of phones, but they're not really. I think kind of, for me, they'll never go away. People really enjoy photography. Eventually phones and various pocket devices will take over. Maybe once the lenses get up to par, you may find that we're going around with very small devices like the iPhone and getting the same results as we do, but it's not far off. The iPhone, is it the S Max, whatever it's called, it's got a great video, it shoots 4K. Yes, it's not going to compete with these cameras, but for internet stuff, man, it's good enough. Using your iPhone is a great way to get good composition actually. If you don't have your phone or your camera on you and you're out and about, use your iPhone to frame the shots and take some shots. You may find there's an area that you really you like. There was a part near the river that I used to always pass in my car, and every time I'd see a shot as I was passing, I think I'm going to stop there eventually and get some shots. But had I had my phone on me, I could have framed the shot and just got an idea. And it gives you some good ideas about where you might want to do some photography or get some shots, especially when you're in the city and there's lots of buildings around. If you can find some interesting places, grab your iPhone out, take a few shots. I keep mentioning iPhones, there are other brands of phone. Grab your phone out and go and shoot. Use it to frame your shots, and then when you get a chance, go back and use your cameras. Street photography is fun. I don't do enough of it. I've kind of dabbled, but I'd like to do more. If anyone fancies going out and shooting anytime, I'd be more than happy to come and meet you and go and shoot some street photography. And also, if there's anyone out there that can teach me, I'm all about learning at the moment. I'm just lapping up photography. I really enjoy it so much. Totally geeking out on it, and it's really good fun. Anyway, all I want to say was be creative. I just want to talk about the kind of choices that you have out there at the moment in terms of the mirrorless. I know I mentioned it before, but right now I think that between the Sony A7R3, the A7 III, the Fuji XT3, the new Panasonics that have come out, the Nikons, the Canon EOS R, which by the way I will pick up at some point and try out. I've only dabbled with it in shops. I've never used Canons, which is ridiculous. A lot of people love them, but I wasn't around in those early parts when people were shooting Canon video, with the 5Ds and whatever they're called, the 1DXs, and I wasn't there for that. I wasn't using them, and so I didn't have that kind of, I'm going to say, old school love of Canon. I'm kind of indifferent and very neutral with my cameras. The Sonys, they're very kind of mechanical, they just do a job. I don't really feel passionate about Sony, but I do feel passionate about the results I get. You see, that's the difference, is that people go on about the bodies and the ergonomics of the Fujis and they make you feel good. The Sony makes me feel good once I look back at the footage. That's the difference, and the footage is everything. I really like what it does, but look at this Fuji. I mean, it's doing a cracking job right now. I can see it's locked on my eye the whole time. I'm moving around. Let's see if I can fool it. Let's do the old holding up the Sony. So I've got a frozen shoulder at the moment, so a bit of a challenge. Is that locking on? That's catching my eye now. Shove it in front of my face. You tell me what it's doing. Is it nabbing focus again? Let's try that again. No, I like the Fuji. In terms of vlogging cameras, I personally don't think any of these cameras are particularly geared for vlogging. I really don't. I think for vlogging you just need a small sort of camera like the M50, the Canon, or those kinds of things. I think you're better off with a camera like that. The RX100 Mark 5 and 6, you can pick up the Mark 3. They're all great cameras. If you want 4K, obviously you need to go for the later versions, but they've actually got the flip out screen, haven't they? So they're perfect little vlogging cameras, and the HD on those is pretty decent. So, but I don't know about Sony's. I guess you can use them, but with a nice wide lens. But you know, for me, no. This is for people behind the camera, and I think the XT3 is similarly. The XT30 is coming out, we believe. There's been some rumours about it being released in quite shortly, really. If that comes out and it does sort of 4K 30, it's a nice small body. If they can give it a flip screen, could you imagine the little XT30 with the hello? And I think that'd work quite well. The only thing it would be lacking, a bit like the XT3, is the stabilisation, but you could use it potentially on a small lightweight gimbal like the Xeon Crane M. That's a lightweight gimbal. I think it sort of holds about 650 grams, you know. And I think the XT30 is around that with a small lens. So if you've got a small wide lens on that, I reckon you could potentially use that as a vlogging setup. Don't know if it's going to have a mic input because it's been a while since I looked at the XT20. I think it's got a mic input. I could be wrong, but that could do it. I think there'll be a few cameras now. The next generation, they'll be a little bit more geared towards vloggers, I think, you know. But I still think that little Canon's a great camera, the M50 for vloggers, because of the way the screen works. And it's got the AF in 1080p, but not in 4K. The dual AF, you know, dual pixel AF, which is a great system. Anyway, I've talked enough. I'm not sure I've actually told you anything. I'm just sort of rambling on, which is hence the title of the YouTube channel, really. I just can't stop rambling about cameras, but I love them so much, you know. I don't know what you guys think of this Tamron, if anyone's using it. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on it. And also, the old boy, the 16-35 f4. This is a great lens, really good lens. Anyway, I think these lenses represent good price point, you see, apart from the 16-35, but you know, that's a nice zoom, and it wasn't too expensive. I think they're around £980 at the moment. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was I bought my Fuji. Am I allowed to mention the shop on YouTube? I bought it from a well-known camera store. Not the best camera store in the world, actually, but it's well known, and in the UK, in London. But they're doing a deal, and a few people are doing a deal now, or Fuji are doing a deal. It's £1,699, but it includes the camera grip, and if I'm not mistaken, the camera grip is traditionally about £250 to £300. So, you know, around the $300 mark, maybe more. So that was a really good deal. I'm really chuffed. I've got the grip. I bought 2 generic batteries for it. So it's a great little video setup. I mean, I'm trying it out now to see what it does. It's mainly a test, really. I'm going to go out and shoot some cinematic footage for you guys so you can get a vibe for it. I'm going to do some gimbal footage. When I do this video shoot for this PT instructor, personal trainer, he wants to do some kind of nice stylized sort of Instagram-y kind of videos, and I'll give you a real vibe for that. I'll throw some music on there. And you can get a vibe for the Fuji. Also, I mentioned that the Fuji 56 1.2 wasn't too great for video autofocus, which it isn't, but we just wanted to follow up on that and say it doesn't mean you can't use it for video. I mean, you can manually focus it and get that lovely blurred out background if you want to get a nice cinematic look. So I may end up picking up that lens. I'm not sure, maybe you guys can help me decide what to get next. The reason why I love the 18-55 is because that IBIS, and the other lens choices with IBIS not so good. There's the 50-140 f2.8 that I'm interested in. But there's been a couple of videos out there talking about the autofocus. I tried it and it was pretty good. So that may be the next lens I buy, just to get that kind of range if I need it, especially if I'm shooting the XT3 on a tripod as I am now. I could be a lot more zoomed in at 2.8. Obviously on the 18 to 55, getting confused, it will shut down to f4, so not so good. But you know, this is okay. I'm not expecting too much from this lens. I just want it to focus on what it's focusing on, and if I want cinematic, I've got different choices. 85 1.8s. These lenses for me represent good bang for their buck. The 85 is cheap, the 50 is cheap, but it's a very good lens. You can do some really good professional work with this lens. Don't rule it out. It's as light as a feather. It makes great light work of a gimbal. And then the Tamron, if you want a good all-round sort of walk-around lens. Yes, 28mm is a little bit falls short of the 24mm mark, obviously, if you want that extra wide sort of look. But 28 is still okay. It's not bad. I mean, I really like this lens. I really do. I'll show you some footage. I'm going to put together some videos. I'm not particularly good at this YouTube at the minute, but I'm going to try and improve. I'm going to improve my production value. For instance, I'm using the video mic. Is it the micro? The Rode Micro, and I'm a little bit far away. I do have leveler mics and various other mics. So I'll improve the production value on these videos, and I'm going to try them in different scenarios. You know, different lenses. And I'll explain which setups I'm using so you can get an idea of what they look like. You know, if you're setting up a YouTube channel, this Fuji's not too bad. You know, I love the thing personally. I think I'll end up sticking with it, even if I do, even if they do bring out some new systems. For now, I'm gonna stick with it. I may hire some camera lens combinations and just do some reviews of them once I've had a chance to try them out more fully. I really want to go with the Canon. I think the Canon deserves the look in from me, because I've kind of ruled it out, but every time I try out Canons I really like their autofocus. I don't know what's holding me back. I think it's because of all the kind of development issues with them kind of holding back on their functionality that maybe stopped me from going in that direction, and the kind of time that I was getting into it, Sony were kind of taking off and everyone was saying Sony, so I kind of got seduced by that slightly as well. Anyway, you decide what you want to buy. Base your decisions on all the information that you gather. That's what I did. I gathered all the information. I used YouTube as my resource. Thank you, YouTube, by the way. I mean, it's a great resource. I don't watch terrestrial TV anymore. I just watch YouTube videos, and the reason why I like YouTube videos is because I learn from them. It's an education. It's my university now. It can be yours too. I'm sure there's many people out there learning their trade because of YouTube, and more power to it, you know. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to it now. Thanks for listening. This was way over 10 minutes, wasn't it? Oh God, I'm so sorry.